This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cabot.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston, where your first MLB bet gets you 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. And also, don't forget about our friends at Indeed, the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. All right, Greg. We're going to take a look at this team's top talent, and here's what you want to do here. And start by counting down from 5 to 1 on who we first think the top 5 players are right now. So the top 5 players on this roster right now, 5 to 1 is what we'll do first. And then we'll get into the list as far as players that we think the Patriots need for them to contend for a postseason spot. So top 5 players right now, 5 to 1. And then we list the top 5 players that we think the Patriots will need to play well so they can contend for a postseason spot. So let's just dive right in. You're back from some time off with the family. I know you got stuff to do. I'm trying to pack up this house. So again, I apologize for the cavernous audio, but it is what it is. Let's get to the top 5 players right now. Greg Bedard, on your list, on this roster. Let's start with 5.
So just to give people a little bit of background, this sort of came off from, I think Mike Giardi started this, and it's been sort of spreading by like wildfire, but I wanted to do a different twist on it. I mean, it's the dead time. We got a couple weeks until training camp. Nothing's going on. No news on DeAndre Hopkins. No news on Dalvin Cook. So, we're putting a little twist on it. And, my rankings are going to be mostly based off of where I had them ranked at the end of last season, and I ranked everybody on the roster. And then we'll get into, if the Patriots are to contend for the postseason and to get into the postseason and maybe win a game or two, how the top 5 changes for that. So as of right now, my number 5 player, and this will be a little bit controversial because I actually think he finished 12th in my ratings for last season when I went back and looked at it. But some people have left, so there's been some shuffling, and I just think his athletic talent is enough to get him into the list. Certainly if you're just doing just the purely most talented guys on the roster, he would certainly be in the top 5. So I landed Kyle Duggar as my number 5 player. We've talked about him many times before. I think he's good. I don't think he's as good as like a lot of people think that he is in New England. He is, if you look at PFF's rating, when they went through like the top 20 safeties, he wasn't on the list. Fowler just did his list pulling NFL executives, and Duggar didn't make the top 10. I think he finished like 12th, basically like in the next group. So, I'd say that's fair. I would say somewhere in the around 12 to 20 in the NFL, but for this Patriots team, I put him at number 5.
I'm going to go a little outside the box, I think, for some people here, but I'm going to put Juwan Bentley, who for me is rising up on my personal board. You go back 2 years ago, Greg, we were talking about this guy. Can he do anything in coverage? Will he, impact the game in that aspect? And he has steadily improved in pass coverage. He at least can now hold his own water a little bit in that aspect. And I think he just continues to be better every single year. He's a captain kind of personality on this team. He's somebody that is going to lead this team. So I go with Juwan Bentley as my 5th guy. I'll jump to my 4th guy here. We can go back and forth. My 4th guy is your 5th guy, and that's Kyle Duggar. I think the big question for Kyle this year is whether or not he's going to take that final step into being an elite guy. You mentioned Jeremy Fowler's list. Wherever you feel he is, whether he's 5 to 10, whether he's 10 to 13, 10 to 15, is he going to take that step? I thought you brought up a great point, Greg, that's not talked about enough with Duggar, his age. We all kind of think of him as a younger guy because he was just drafted a few years ago. He came into the league older than usual. So this could be his ceiling, and that's not a bad thing. He's very good. But can he take that next step? Does he have more within his game to be truly elite at his position? What does Devin McCourty's absence mean for his role? Will he be asked to do more? Will he do some things differently? But I think this is a big year for Duggar. He's got to be in the top 5, though.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And his age is certainly a factor on whether can he go up to another level, being 27 years old. If he was 24, you would say, all right, chances are, yeah, he's got another level to go. This might be who he is, which is fine. Will the Patriots pay for that? We shall see. Number 4 on my list was Rhamondre Stevenson. He's a guy that you could argue could be higher up the list. I do think he was a victim of circumstances this past season in that, Damian Harris dealt with injuries all season, and they had a couple rookies there, and he had to carry the whole load, and that's never good for anybody. He did a good job with it. He expanded his repertoire into the pass game and was sort of a dual threat for this team. So that was nice to see, and nice to see going into the season. But, if Harris was there to share the load a little bit more, I think Stevenson would have been even better, more effective. Of course, there were offensive line issues, which also sort of dinged Stevenson's production last year. But I still think he's the number 4 guy for me.
All right. Who's number 3 on your list?
So I have Michael Wenu, the right guard. His stats last year weren't eye-popping. I went back and looked. I had him for 17.5 total QB pressures, which is basically like 1 a game. It's pretty good. 13 stuff runs is a little bit of a lot. He was second on the team to Cole Strange's 27, which leaves you room for growth. But, I think every time I turned on the film and did my study, I thought that, he was borderline pretty much every game in consideration for 3 up, somewhere in the top 5 almost every single game. There were a couple rough patches in there when they went against a bunch of really good interior guys, but I still think he did a really nice job. He was impressive, and to me, he is the 3rd best player on the Patriots, right now. Of course, he's coming off an injury thing, so we'll need to see where he is, but right now, I would say he's the 3rd best at his job on this team.
My 3 was your 4. I'll go Stevenson, legitimate number 1 back. Showed that he can play a role in the passing game. I still think you'll see Ty Montgomery be the number 1 option for that 3rd down back role. I don't think you're going to see Stevenson catch 60 footballs, but he at least showed that he could catch the football. He had some drops, yes. He wasn't flawless, but he's not completely useless in the receiving game, which was good to see. I do wonder again, gas tank. How much can he give you? Does he give you enough all year long from week 1 to week 18? We'll have to wait and see. Will the Patriots lean on somebody else as that second back? Can Strong step up? Can Harris step up? Is Montgomery going to be the second back / 3rd down back? That's all to be figured out. Dalvin Cook, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to at least kick the tires and see where he's at. But I got Stevenson as my number 3 guy on my list. Before we get to my number 2, Greg, let's talk to the fine people that listen to this podcast and watch this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give us that thumbs up and that like. That is very important to the success of this pod. But before we get to number 2 and number 1 on our respective lists, Greg, hit the people up with some info on FanDuel.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. It's all in an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. And I'm telling you, that happens. I did it myself. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, let's get back to the Patriots while the Boston Bruins tweet out another picture of Milan Lucic to let everybody know that Lucic, if you haven't heard, if you've been under a rock, Lucic is back in Boston. So just my goodness, the investment by the Bruins, not money-wise, but social media-wise, has been tremendous.
Can you imagine if they signed somebody who was good who didn't look like he was 55 years old walking around the North End?
My freaking word. All right, let's get back to the top 5 players right now on this Patriots roster. We're down to the final 2. I'll start here with my second guy. Onwenu is my number 2. Look, we brought up the idea of Kyle Duggar maybe taking that final step to be a truly elite player at his position. I think this is the year you see Onwenu do that. I think some people would consider him elite already. The elite word's fun. How many people are considered elite at each position is a different conversation in an entire podcast if we wanted to do it. But I think this is the year that Onwenu puts everything together, has his best season in the league as long as he's healthy. And this is the year that everybody says, hands down, that dude is top 2 or 3 at his position. I think he's going to be a stud, so I go to Onwenu at number 2.
Good choice, obviously, because I had him on my list. I'm going with a different interior guy. A guy, Nick, who does not get enough respect. I don't understand what the deal is, and I think when I give you a couple of stats from this past season, you'll understand why I like him so much. And remember, last year, he didn't even get to do a lot of the checks and different line calls and stuff like that he's really good at. He'll get back to doing that this year. You know, I just think David Andrews is one of the most underrated Patriots. I don't know why he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. Everybody wants to talk about, you know, and rightfully so. Michael Onwenu is a good player. You know, they want to bring up Cole Strange and highlight his really good plays, but overlook his really bad plays. Well, you know, David Andrews is a guy who doesn't have many bad plays. He really doesn't. When he has a bad game, it's usually 1, maybe 2 a season. This past year, he only gave up 9.5 quarterback pressures. That's with a rookie next to him. And 3, more importantly for me, for an interior or center, 3.5 stuffed runs. That's it. Like, sure. That's amazing to me, and not enough people are putting the respect on the name of the big guy from Georgia. I don't know if he could get any better than he played last year. Interesting that they basically drafted his replacement, another Andrews. You know, but I just think the world of Andrews, and to me, he was their second best player overall last season.
Guy's awesome. I've never met him off the field personally, but people speak very well of him. Seems like somebody who's got his ish in order, and just a tremendous football player, and one of the better finds for Bill Belichick over the past decade or so. Number 1, this should not surprise anybody. Greg's number 1 aligns with my number 1. I think it aligns with probably everybody's number 1 for this team. And please do the honors and announce that man's name, Greg.
Everybody knows the only current blue chip player on the New England Patriots is Matthew Judon, who, you know, built off his first season, which was half awesome, half not so good. This year was more like 2/3 awesome, 1/3 like not great, even though he brought up that level a little bit. 62 total quarterback pressures is a truckload, 8.5 stuffed runs at his position is a lot. You know, he's a guy that the defense has to account for. Is he the greatest one-on-one pass rusher ever? No. Does he get a lot of his pressure from scheme? Yeah. But he fits what the Patriots do. And on a game in, game out, down in, down out basis, he is their most consistently excellent player. And, you know, he needs to do that again this year.
Absolute stud. Again, he's my number 1. I would imagine that most Patriots fans, if not all of you listening to this or watching this on YouTube, if you were compiling your own list, you would have Judon at number 1 as well. All right, so there's the top 5 players on the roster right now for the Patriots that Greg and I have gone through from 5 to 1. We still have to take a look at the top 5 Patriots this year that need to play well for this team to contend for a postseason spot. So you would say maybe the 5 most important Patriots coming up. But before we get to that list, Greg wants to tell us all about our friends at Indeed.
Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that find your match candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data. I love how Indeed does the hard work for you. Indeed shows you the candidates whose resume on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post so you can hire faster. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Bedard. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Bedard. Just go to Indeed.com/Bedard, Bedard, and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Bedard. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed.com. And if you're hiring in the New England area, I'm looking. It's me.
Nick's on Indeed. Go look for him over there.
So, all right, we gave you the top 5 players right now on this roster. Let's take a look now at the top 5 players for this team to contend for the postseason. Okay, the guys that need to step up, play better, or really show us something in their rookie season, hint, that will make this team that much better and give them a much better shot at getting to the postseason, maybe even winning a postseason game, which hasn't happened in a little bit. So let's start with number 5, Greg. I'll give you my first guy. I think it matches your first guy, and that's Christian Gonzalez. His ability to be a true number 1 outside corner could make this defense top 3. I know there's some back and forth, and you've been a part of this argument saying, yeah, the Patriots defense statistically and analytically last year was good, but against really good quarterbacks, they were not as good. And you've got to factor in all of that. And you look at the schedule this year, and they've got a really tough schedule against a murderer's row of quarterback talent. If Christian Gonzalez can be that number 1 corner on the outside, I think at all 3 levels, you're sitting really, really well as a defense. And it allows you to do different things with your secondary as well as far as approach. So Christian Gonzalez, I think, is vital to this team and this program this year. If he could be a number 1 guy, he doesn't have to be Sauce Gardner, but if he gives us at least some of that, you got to feel really good, not only about the long term, but also this season as a Patriots fan.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this top 5 list, this is basically us, looking down the road that, come January or February, when we're talking about the end of the season for this team, that, this is the top 5 list at the end of the day, if things go really well for this team. And I put Christian Gonzalez, but it really doesn't need to be Gonzalez. It could be Jack Jones. Like somebody, one of the younger cornerbacks has to step up and be the guy, and if it's not Gonzalez, but Jack Jones does it, that's fine. But I do think, Nick, when you talk about last year's team, and it's nice that people have come around on, our sort of point of view on this defense, which we sort of said about, all of the end of last season. We've been here. Welcome everyone else to the argument that, that this team was really inflated against some really bad backup quarterbacks and struggled against the better guys. And I think what they've done at cornerback, re-upping Jonathan Jones, drafting Christian Gonzalez in the first round, hanging on to Jack Jones when many other teams might have let him go after, his sort of second strike as a Patriot within like 6 months. I think it tells you that the team looked back at last year and said, like, we're not good enough in the passing game. I mean, every good quarterback, every good offense, had their way with the Patriots. A lot of them scored at least 30 points against them. I mean, remember, even the Raiders in mediocre Derek Carr, they just needed to make one play and they would have won that game. Instead, Carr goes down and throws like a 40-yard touchdown pass with, 30 seconds left. He converted, a 4th and like 15 on that drive? Like, there were so many times the Ravens game, if they just would have had one more play out of the secondary, then they would have been in the playoffs, but they could never get that. So Christian Gonzalez is there, and we're going to go with Christian Gonzalez. If the Patriots are a viable contender this year, it's because one of their young cornerbacks steps up.
All right, let's get to number 4, top 5 players for this team to contend for the postseason. The 5th guy, both of us agreed on, Christian Gonzalez. Your 4th guy, Greg.
Christian Barmore. I think that, we've talked about it before, but in relation to Matthew Judon. Matthew Judon's really good. He's sort of a scheme guy. Christian Barmore, to me, is the one sort of potentially dominant guy on the inside that is going to be a matchup nightmare for teams where the Patriots, like, if he's healthy and effective, if they scheme things up to get him single blocked, there aren't many interior guys that can handle him. And if he can start wrecking the game from the inside, it'll make it even easier for Judon and Uche and those guys and, bring in blitzes from the second level, whether it's Duggar or Mapu or whatever. Like if Christian Barmore can be, even if it's just sub package as a pass rusher on passing downs, if he can be out there and be healthy and effective and wreck the game like we've seen him do in flashes his first 2 seasons, even last year when he came back from injury, he had some dominating performances. If he can do that for 17 games, similar to what you said about Christian Gonzalez or one of the young cornerbacks, those young guys stepping up and being a problem makes everybody better on this defense.
I'm going offense, and I'm looking at the tight end position for my number 4 spot. You go back a few years ago, Bill Belichick, they draft Asiasi, Dalton Keene, neither guy works out. They go to free agency, they sign Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. One of those guys worked out. This team has been desperate to try to find the 2 tight end formula for the last several years. They've been unable to do that. I think they have the 2 guys right now that can make it happen this year. Mike Gesicki is going to be my 4th guy. Again, that 2 tight end offensive impact, it's rather obvious that Belichick believes that's important. That is crucial to the operation of this offense by the way they've handled that position in the draft and in free agency. And quite frankly, you lost Jacoby Myers. I don't necessarily trust Juju Smith-Schuster. I think you're going to see Gesicki play a vital role in that kind of slot position. He's going to move around a lot. He's going to go down the seam. That opens some things up for this offense. If Gesicki has a very good year and Hunter Henry is good, I think this offense is pretty damn good. They'll help the wide receivers out. And because I have some questions at wide receiver, especially with their health, I'm going to go Gesicki at number 4. My number 3 is also somebody that you have at number 3. We agree on this one.
Ooh.
And that's Trent Brown. And I saw the tweet yesterday. I forget who it was, but Trent Brown's working out with some other people. Thank God. Hopefully that means that he's going to continue to work out and continue to lose weight.
It wasn't a one-off, sort of like my workouts. When I hit the Nautilus like once a month.
It's like
not working for me.
You got on the exercise bike for like 10 minutes. He's like, all right, I'm going to get a burger. Let's hope it's not that kind of situation. Let's hope that he's out there and he's working his ass off. And maybe, just maybe, he realizes that he did not show up to minicamp the way he should have shown up. But I just think you need him on the left side, Greg. If he's not good on the left side, you got to look at the right side and that domino effect. And then, of course, let's not also forget, look, Cole Strange had a good season last year. All things considered, he improved as the year went along. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to put more pressure on Cole Strange. I want him to feel comfortable about continuing to improve and develop so he could be a stud left guard in this league. And if you take away Trent Brown and you're trying to put one of the other guys there at the left side, that inherently puts more pressure on Cole Strange. So Trent Brown is my 3rd guy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we talked about it last week with sort of our X factor for this team, that I think he's the swing guy on this team in terms of how the fortunes for the season are going to go. And that is just to hear myself say that out loud, that is a scary proposition that will probably keep me up at night if I'm a Patriots fan or especially a Patriots coach. But, if Trent Brown is not on this top 5 list at the end of this season, I would wager pretty heavily the Patriots have not made the playoffs again. Yeah. I mean, like you said, the domino effect that if Trent Brown isn't manning one of the tackle spots, and I don't really care which one it is, if he could just do a really good job at one of the spots and be sort of like a borderline Pro Bowl talent like he was his first year here, if he gives them that, then they can be really successful. But if he doesn't, then all of a sudden you're talking about Calvin Anderson and Riley Reif and Connor McDermott and Sidney So playing a lot of snaps, and that's not a good proposition. Let's see, Mac Jones had at least 2 X-rays in the first 3 games last year, including when he was out for like a month. You could put the X-ray over under at like 4 if Trent Brown isn't out there and doing a good job and landing on this top 5 list. So yeah, definitely a swing factor on this team.
All right, who's your number 2 guy?
Judon. I mean, we all know he's still got to be there. I mean, could somebody like Uche do a little bit more and take some of the pressure off him? And, Barmore, could those guys step up a little bit more? Yeah, but I mean, if Uche doesn't have Judon on the other side, if Barmore doesn't have Judon over there also getting attention, then they're going to be easier to shut down on the inside and on the outside. And so, to me, Matthew Judon still needs to be one of the, say, 3 best players on this team if they're going to do anything this season.
Probably going to be some people that disagree with this, but I couldn't care less. Holler at me at Nick C Radio on Twitter and just, swear at me, whatever you want to do. I'll mute you. The greatest thing on Twitter still to this day. Elon hasn't touched it. He will soon. He'll ruin that as well. I'm going to stick with the offensive line. Ooh, boo-hoo-hoo. I sound like Bedard here with my overemphasis on offensive line play. But I just have this feeling that you can patch it together defensively and at least be somewhat okay defensively with the talent that they have on that side of the ball. But one of Riley Reiff and Calvin Anderson has to be at least good, if not decent, because I don't have a ton of confidence in Trent Brown. And if Trent Brown is not good Trent Brown, and then you've got an absolute nightmare on the right side because Reiff looks like he's 150 years old and Calvin Anderson's a turnstile, then everything is screwed. It's all screwed. This year will be miserable. We'll be complaining every week about this offensive line and how couldn't they have drafted an offensive tackle in the first 2 rounds and why didn't they move up instead of drafting Keon White and yada, yada, yada. It's going to be fodder for the Adam Joneses of the world over and over and over again. So please, I don't want to hear Adam screaming and yelling at me about this offensive line when I move back to New England and I'm listening to EEI at times. So Calvin Anderson, Riley Reiff, one of those guys has to show up. If they don't, and you're relying on Trent Brown to save the day so then you can double on the right side, I don't feel great about that.
Yeah, it's a bold choice. I don't disagree with that. It just popped into my head to cross sports again. So Riley Reiff is the Milan Lucic of right tackles. We need some Patriots social media following Riley Reiff around.
Come on, Stacey James. Stacey James going to come out in post games and just bring out Riley Reiff every post game. We got Riley Reiff, guys. Riley Reiff at the podium. Let's go. Let's talk to him. Hopefully they don't have to wheel him in. He gets helped by like 3 guys up to the podium. It looks like Weekend at Bernie's by week 7. All right, number 1 guy. So you and I, again, we agree on this. We've agreed, I think, on 3 guys. And I think if you're a Patriots fan, and you obviously are, listening to this podcast, watching this podcast on YouTube, unless you're behind enemy lines trying to get state secrets about the Patriots, which we don't have. Although I do have an entertaining story to tell you after this pick here. But we both have Mac Jones. Mac Jones, top 5 players for this team to contend for the postseason. Mac's got to be number 1. Greg, if he stinks, they're not much better than they were last year.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think that, being number 1 on this team, you could argue like he obviously needs to be on the top 5 list. I mean, I just think, if say he gets back to where he was, continues on from where he was with his rookie season. So he wasn't quite, he made the Pro Bowl, but he wasn't quite a Pro Bowler. If he's in especially in the AFC, if we're even talking about Mac Jones in the Pro Bowl AFC voting, that means he had a really good season because there are like 10 really good quarterbacks in the AFC. So it's, you can't judge him like Judon will be closer to Pro Bowl voting than, quarterbacks just stacked in the AFC. But if he goes to where he was at the end of rookie season and goes up about, a step or 2, then, he's really effective. He cuts down on his interceptions, increases the touchdowns a little bit more. And I think he will, because what people forget is that Mac Jones was tightly stage managed by Josh McDaniels as a rookie. And he needed that. He needed that. Like the worst thing you want to do with a young quarterback is try to give him too much to do too early, and he can't do it. And then, almost if you want to look at Zach Wilson or any other sort of failed young quarterback, I mean, Josh McDaniels at the time, he didn't know he was going to be Raiders coach after the season. He thought maybe this could be my quarterback if I succeed, Bill Belichick. So he had a plan for Mac Jones, and that was, hey, we're going to run the ball, a lot of play action. It's going to be conservative, not too many deep shots. We're not going to expose you to too much pressure, all that stuff. And that was the path that he was on. And I thought that's what they needed to do. Last year should have been another step forward, a little bit, sort of loosen the laces a little bit. And this year would have been almost taking off the laces. Do I think they're going to be there yet? No, but I'm hopeful by the second half of the season that everybody's adjusted to Billy O'Brien. Billy O'Brien knows the players, knows what Mac Jones likes, knows what this offense can do. And by the second half of the season, we're going to hopefully look at Mac Jones and say, man, he's playing really good football. He's one of the best players on this team. And if that happens, then we're talking about the playoffs.
All right, before we get to the member question of the day that has to do with Patriots spending and extending players and all that good stuff, I just want to share this story for like 2 minutes. I had a dream last night, and the dream included Bill Belichick and one or two unnamed people within the Patriots organization. And I don't know if I was an intern. I don't know if I was a scout. I don't know if I was a lackey. But it was around draft time, Greg. And Belichick was having this conversation with whoever else was in the room with them. And they asked me to go get this player's file. And he was talking about this guy that had really leapt out at him and somebody that had written to him when he was younger and all of this stuff. And he was kind of a diamond in the rough, but now he was shooting up draft boards and people thought he might go in late in the second round. I went up the stairs and I opened up this like weird little compartment thing that I needed a key to open. And there was this file on the player and I took it out. The player's name was CJ Dennison. I don't think it's anybody that actually exists, but for some reason that was the name that was in my dream head. So CJ Dennison, if they ever draft a guy, if Bill Belichick ever drafts a CJ Dennison, go back to this July 12th, 2023. And I will be the next Nostradamus if something pops up with a CJ Dennison. But I
hopefully play special teams.
Maybe. And I opened it up and I had all these like, stats about the guy and all these secrets about him. And Belichick was thumbing through it. And I don't know if that's what really happens. I don't know if they have compartments with files for each draft guy. I don't think so. But I woke up and I thought I was a member of the Patriots. I thought I was working for them. And I was thrown off and a little out of whack. So maybe that's my next calling, Greg. As I move back to New England, if Bill's listening, Bill, I got your message via the telepathic dream world. I'm ready to go to work. If you need me to go find a file on a guy, I'm ready. I'm there. I'm willing. I'm able. So maybe that's my next calling. But I'm dreaming about the Patriots front office, which I think is highly troubling, and I need a light.
In July.
Yeah. In July, in Sacramento, California, when it's going to be 110 degrees on Saturday.
Woof.
Was going to have a garage sale on Saturday to try to get rid of this stuff that we got in the house. And then saw that it was 110 and said, garage sale not happening. All right, let's get to the BSJ member question of the day and away from my dreams. Mike from Stoneham has a question. Greg, here is what I do not understand. Are you saying the CBA prevents, and I'm sure Greg will give you the context in the background. Are you saying the CBA prevents the Patriots from going to Rhamondre Stevenson this year and extending him? He was not a first-round pick, so one would assume they could opt to extend him whenever they wanted to. Did the NFLPA screw their players over that badly that they cannot come to a new contract agreement with the team if it's mutually beneficial? So, Greg, obviously, Mike didn't just cook up this question out of nowhere. Where do you get this question from, and what's your answer to that question?
So it was my column from the other day about, Dalvin Cook. And it was off of Mike Lombardi saying I think the Patriots have interest and they should be interested. And it was basically a column about how, we've talked about it before that, Bill Belichick believes that there's a salary structure on every team. Like he's not going to go in and bring in some guy from the outside, like when Julian Edelman was here. He didn't bring any huge money free agents when Julian Edelman was the workhorse here because, you bring in a guy that makes $10 million and Julian's making $5 million. How's Julian going to feel about that? What's this guy done to, oftentimes it has an adverse effect in the locker room, even though if fans don't want to talk about it. Trust me, it happens all the time on every team, even the Patriots. I mean, even remember when Malcolm Butler wouldn't take the Patriots contract extension offer and the Patriots were like, fine, we'll just give it to Stephon Gilmore. Well, Malcolm didn't like it. Malcolm's teammates didn't like it, to the point that in Stephon Gilmore's first training camp practice, him and Julian Edelman are slugging it out in the end of the end zone. And I do think that was partly Julian giving a little nod to his teammates. So, it was related to, Dalvin Cook. It's fine that you want to bring him in, but this is a guy who wants to make somewhere in the ballpark of $9 million this year. Rhamondre Stevenson makes $950,000 this year. Yeah. So Bill Belichick knows better than anybody. That's why I think it's much more. You could much rather see them bring in, say, a Leonard Fournette or who's the other guy? Kareem Hunt. Guys who would take like $3 million plus incentives. Like Rhamondre could deal with that. And it would be clear those guys would be his backup. But if you're paying Dalvin Cook $9 million a year to come in here and take Rhamondre's reps, and take some of his stats for, when he goes for a contract, it's probably not going to go well. So I have a hard time seeing Bill Belichick doing the Dalvin Cook thing unless Cook absolutely wants to take a bargain basement deal, which I don't think he wants to do. So, my point about Rhamondre Stevenson is that he is entering his third year. They cannot redo his contract until after his fourth season. Yes, I think that's correct. I just drew a blank. But whatever, they can't do Rhamondre Stevenson's contract right now. So even if you wanted, in a lot of cases, like say with Devontae Parker, they gave him some future money that maybe makes it better if they bring in DeAndre Hopkins and sign him. They can't do that with Rhamondre Stevenson. Even though he's earned, I think over the cap has his valuation at $10 million a year right now. And he's making less than $1 million. And so the Patriots can't do anything. So, if you're the Patriots, you could go to Stevenson and promise him, hey, we're going to redo your contract. Here's the framework of it as soon as we can. Okay. And maybe Rhamondre is receptive to that, but what happens if he tears his ACL? Are the Patriots going to honor that contract? So, the point of it was, the question from Mike and Stoneham was, it's true. For a first round pick, you have 4 years, then you have the 5th year option. If he was an undrafted free agent, I'm pretty sure they can redo him in 2 years or possibly after the 3rd. And with every other drafted rookie, it's after their 4th season that they can do their contract. So the point is the Patriots can't do anything about Rhamondre Stevenson's contract right now, and that makes the Dalvin Cook situation even more complicated.
And would they want to? Even if Stevenson is good, how far are they willing to go? Let's not get it twisted. The running back position doesn't have a lot of value in the NFL. And I know running backs have talked about that this offseason. Christian McCaffrey said something about it. Saquon Barkley, the latest with him in the New York Giants, is there at a quote-unquote stalemate about his contract situation. The running back position does not have a ton of value. It's been proven that you can go scoop guys up, undrafted, late rounds, middle rounds, and replace somebody and get production from that somebody. Are there 2 or 3 running backs that are different? Yes. Those guys are the ones that can catch 60 passes, 65 passes, 70 passes a year. Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, if he's healthy. Those are guys that can be weapons and not just running backs. Rhamondre, as we talked about earlier in this podcast, Greg, he's shown the ability that he can catch the football from time to time, but he's not one of those guys. And so when you're looking at a running back, the vast majority of that running back's production coming from the run game and what he can do with the football when it's handed off to him, there's just not a lot of value. And Rhamondre, he's going to want money. The window is tight, as we know, and it's his right to go out and try to get that money. But I always kind of feel it's a little shaky with any running back as far as how long they're going to be part of your program. You never really know. So many guys come in, they drop off. What, Pacheco last year for the Chiefs, was he 7th round or was he undrafted, the Rutgers guy?
Seventh
round pick. You can go back. You can go back through the years and just look at who won the Lombardi that year and who was the running back for that team and how did that team land that running back. There's just been so many guys in the middle, late rounds, undrafted, that have paid dividends for teams. Teams are not going to overextend themselves to get a deal done. Now, would the Patriots want to get a deal done with Stevenson earlier because they wouldn't have to pay him as much? I think that's the route. If Stevenson gets to free agency, then I just find it very hard to believe that he'll be back unless he's willing to take a team discount, as they say. That position just isn't very valuable. It really isn't. All right, this podcast brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston. Your first MLB bet gets you 10 times your first bet amount and bonus bets up to $200. He's Greg. I'm Nick. It's the slow time, but we're going to keep pumping out content. We're a couple weeks away from training camp. I'm hopefully about a month away from actually being feet on the ground in New England. Just stay tuned. Don't forget to listen to this podcast. And when you go to YouTube, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Until next week, be good, be safe, be healthy.